Chapter 136. Raon lowered his sword and the flame's singularity fluttered away like leaves in the wind. The Ice Troll Lord's huge body, which covered the moonlight, knelt on the fading flame. A dark hole remained on the left side of its chest, where the spear of flame had pierced through. TSSSH. As if time was flowing backward, the Ice Troll Lord's skin and flesh were regenerating. It was an outrageous amount of regeneration, befitting the Lord, but it was pointless. After all, its heart was already shredded to pieces by the flame's singularity. KRRR. Raon met the Ice Troll Lord's eyes. Vitality was leaving its white pupils, similar to the perpetual snow. I'm not sure. It looked like the Ice Troll Lord resented him, or wanted to live, or was thanking him, although that might have just been his imagination. I'll grant you a painless death. KRR. Raon raised his sword once again. When he was about to decapitate it in order to relieve its pain, the Ice Troll Lord stood up with a trembling chin. KRR. It was standing confidently on its two legs with clenched fists, as if it wanted to keep fighting until the end. It was the monster's resolution that it would fight until the end without kneeling, befitting a true king. Wonderful. Raon admired that from the bottom of his heart. He never thought he would feel that way for a monster. Krah! The Ice Troll Lord roared and rushed at him. It was losing its balance slightly, like a baby that had just started walking, but it didn't fall down. Raon slashed, so that he did not tarnish its resolution. Sieghart's aloof blade took the Ice Troll Lord's life. KRR. The Ice Troll Lord's thick lips curled up. It was definitely smiling. It wasn't just Raon's imagination, the Ice Troll Lord was indeed thanking him. Qua! KRRRRR. Ki. Upon hearing its final roar, the monsters gave up on fighting and withdrew. They spread out in all directions to run away as fast as they could. As a king, until the end. Just like he said, the Ice Troll Lord died as a king, to a point where Raon felt ashamed instead. Goodbye. Raon closed his eyes, wishing for it to reincarnate in a better place, just like he did. He was a true king. One that I haven't seen for a long while. When he opened his eyes once again, Wrath was looking down on the Ice Troll Lord's corpse. This troll is younger than you if you convert to a human's age. Yet, it already knew what it needed to do. It was truly suited to the title of king. Yes. You can tell from this young troll, who was born and died as a king even though it didn't have anything. Regardless of the race, a king isn't made, but born. Wrath turned to meet Raon's eyes. Is what I used to think. You used to think? Yes. But I changed my opinion after seeing you. What do you mean? The first time I saw you, the number of qualities of a king I could feel from you were less than the chocolate chips in a chocolate cookie. However, you've changed. It's not just your might, but your soul's level has changed. Wrath's eyes sparkled like sapphires. Just like an artisan making a pot from clay, the qualifications of a king are being made inside of your soul. Qualifications of a king. However, it doesn't look like you have any intention of becoming one. You are right. I've never thought about that. He was born as the Lord of Sieghart's grandson, but he couldn't think about succeeding the house. He just wanted to profit from them, and make Sylvia and the maids happy. A commoner's mind with the king's qualities, how interesting. How your qualifications will grow and change, and how your mind will alter in the future, will be fun to watch. Because there's no one like you, even in Devilldom. Then, are you not going to take over my body? Are you admitting your defeat? And nonsense. I just said that you are interesting. I never said I'm not going to take away your mind and body. Wrath shouted, struggling with his short arms. Once the King of Essence targets something, I won't be satisfied until I obtain it. The King of Essence will take away your body by any means necessary. Ah, okay. While we are on that subject, the King of Essence's temperament is similar to that troll kid. I'm the true king that saves my subordinates even if I'm in danger. The only difference is that the King of Essence's power doesn't lose to Enio. Why are you looking at me like that? Wrath shivered, noticing Raon's icy cold gaze. Even now, you still want to brag and prattle on about yourself. Sir Raon. As Raon was shaking his head at wrath, Dorian came running at him. His arm was broken, his entire body was covered in bruises, and his armor was in tatters. You? He thought Dorian was holding on pretty well, but that wasn't the case. He really fought to death to buy time for him. I seriously can't catch up to you. You really killed the voracious ice demon and the blue shamanic demon, and even the lord after that. In comparison, I got my arm broken from fighting just the lord. Dorian sniffled, grabbing his broken arm. What happened to you? Why did you step up? That's... He caressed his belly pocket, unable to reply immediately. You know, you fought the blood-raving demon last time. Yes. Though, he just held out, rather than fighting. I felt so frustrated when I ran away back then. I felt like my heart was tearing. I'm scared of getting hurt physically, but I was even more scared of hurting my heart. That's why I pledged that I'd never run away while leaving my companion behind. And you kept it this time? Yes. Dorian lowered his head in embarrassment. I see. You were very helpful. Raon smiled at Dorian. His chest felt warm from his sincere feelings. It was the first time he was helped, but it didn't feel bad at all. And you, too. He turned his head to look at Edquil, who was standing to the side awkwardly. His condition was even worse than Dorian's. His armor was covered with blood, and the bone of his leg was completely destroyed. It was my pleasure. Pleasure? Edquil had suddenly become polite, even though he used to mumble that he wanted to kill him later. I only did it because I wanted to, so you don't need to mind it. He bowed politely and returned to the castle. Judging from his untainted eyes, it looked like something had really changed in his mind. Shout the name of our hero. From the top of the castle gate, Tarion yelled, holding his bloody sword up high. Woa! Raon! 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 The soldiers yelled Raon's name in unison. The entirety Haben Castle trembled with his name. Raon clenched his fist. My name. It felt like the name he could never reveal, the name he had to hide all the time, was spreading throughout the world. The thrill made his heart pound. Let's go. When he clasped his chest and was about to return to Haben Castle, messages popped up in front of his eyes. You've accomplished great achievements. Your soul level has increased. Regeneration has increased drastically. Title has been created. All stats have increased by 3. Iron Will's rank has increased. Why are there so many of them? Rushing Mountain, to the west of House Robert. Under the mountain famous for its splendid landscape, there was an underground space that no one knew about. In the middle of that space, which was darker than night, about 500 children were kneeling with their eyes closed. They had their hands put together as if they were praying, but cold sweat kept flowing down from their foreheads and backs. Coo. The children, who were enduring it while biting their lips, started to collapse one after the other. Bleeding from their eyes, noses, or ears, their whole bodies trembled. The masked men that were watching from the side took the child and disappeared somewhere each time one collapsed. The children collapsed more and more frequently as time passed, and in the end, there were only 108 of them remaining. The tall masked man that was watching them from the center walked up to the upper floor, where he could look down on the entire space. Darius Robert, with his silver hair similar to a snowfield flowing down to his back, was watching with a wineglass in his hand. Although a lot of time had passed, he looked even younger and livelier than before. The brainwashing has ended. The masked man knelt and bowed at him. So, there are 108. The 108 children were reflected in Darius's aloof pupils. Yes. There are more than we expected. The dogs this time will be more usable. Reduce the number to half. Pardon? Riffraff aren't necessary. What I need are hunting dogs that can bare their fangs against masters. He smiled, looking at the children bleeding from their mouths. The dry smile, devoid of emotion, set off goosebumps. How shall we reduce the number? That's your job. It is nothing I should be concerned about. Darius' blue eyes glowed viciously. I beg your pardon. The masked man smacked his head onto the ground to beg for forgiveness. Blood was dripping from his forehead. Did you feed them the rage worms? Yes. We fed them the improved ones, so they won't be released from the brainwashing like Raon. Raon, Raon. Unlike the same feverish name that resounded in Haben Castle, a cold voice crushed that name. He was a pretty useful one. Darius frowned, looking at the scar on the back of his right hand. Raon's abilities were the best among all the hunting dogs he'd raised so far. If only he hadn't undone the brainwashing by himself. He had the abilities to kill the highest executives of the Six Kings, so losing him was a shame in many ways. PSH. When he was thinking about Raon, the scar on his right hand opened and sticky blood trickled down to the floor. Master. The masked man stood up quickly and was about to run towards him when Darius opened the scar by himself and smiled. Look at this. Raon shoved his fong into me as he died. You shall raise those children to grow up just like him. Darkness crept from Darius's blue eyes. They shall become the hunting dogs that can shove their fangs into the enemy's neck and die with a smile for my sake. Milan and the attack force kept running restlessly, but the sun had already risen a long time ago. When they finally reached the snowfield where they could see Haben Castle from far away, dozens of monsters came rushing at them. Coup! Prepare for battle! He bit his lip in anxiety and ordered to fight, but it seemed the monsters had no intentions of fighting as they spread out everywhere without even looking back. He finally noticed the monsters' conditions. Their bodies were covered in blood, their hands were empty, and their eyes were full of distress. It was the classic appearance of remnants. What is that? Milan furrowed his brow, looking at the monsters running away in a hurry. Although he'd lived there for dozens of years, it was his first time witnessing such a thing. Let's move on. Run at full speed. Hiding his confused expression, he ordered them to depart once again. Understood. Since the attack force was also anxious, they quickly started running towards Haben Castle. Because the group consisted of elites, Milan and the attack force managed to reach Haben Castle before noon. However, the condition was completely different from what they'd imagined. The castle walls weren't destroyed, and countless monsters were dead under the castle walls. On the other hand, they couldn't find a single soldier's corpse. What is this? What happened here? What the hell happened this time? The attack force entered inside the castle with trembling legs. Say, Commander! Look this way! Barty, the first scouting party leader, shouted when Milan was walking while looking around. Upon following him, there was a monster's corpse that was 2 times bigger than an average ice troll. This is it. It's the ice troll lord. So, it was a trap after all. But who could have? Commander! There's an Eden demon here. There's another one here. It's the voracious ice demon. The scout's eyes became wide open in astonishment upon finding the corpses of the voracious ice demon and the blue shamanic demon. An ice troll lord, the voracious ice demon and the blue shamanic demon? Milan swallowed harshly, looking at the 3 monsters one after another. What happened here? There were corpses of 2 of Eden's demons, an ice troll lord, and countless monsters. Yet, the corpses or flesh of humans were nowhere to be seen. He could understand that it was Eden's trap, but he couldn't even begin to figure out how they managed to survive against them. Let's go for now. Milan caught his breath and walked towards the castle gate. Cheers and roars could be heard from the inside. When he tried to listen more closely, they were shouting someone's name. Raon? It was Raon. His name was resounding to reach the sky. After hearing what happened overnight, Milan and the officers sitting in the conference room went blank, eyes trembling. How could this happen in my lifetime? I know, right? Eden and an ice troll lord attacked, yet there were no casualties at all? It feels like a dream. This must be the war god's blessing. It's not the war god's blessing, but Raon's blessing. He did everything on his own this time, again. Did he seriously get a single arm broken from killing the voracious ice demon, the blue shamanic demon, and the ice troll lord? He is a real monster. The officers praised Raon's prowess and strategy in amazement. Regardless of what happened, we won in the end. Festival. It's time for a festival, for 3 days and nights. Do you think 3 days and nights are enough? We should make it a whole week. That's right. We won't get another day like this for the rest of our lives. Since it was obvious that there would be no monsters for a while, the officers raised their hands, saying that they should hold a festival right away. There's something we need to do before the festival. Millen silenced the conference room, the atmosphere having grown as loud as the marketplaces beforehand. That would be. You are praising Raon, but cheers aren't all we are giving him, right? Oh, of course not. We have to give him the best award in gold. The officers nodded immediately. That's right. The reason I'm alive right now is thanks to Raon. Tarion, who told him about Raon's fight, smiled broadly. Then we can make this short. Millen tapped on the table and his eyes sparkled. I'm thinking about giving him Haben Castle's relic. Chapter 137. A relic? By relic, you mean heir? The officer's gazes gathered to the snowbound blade hanging around Millen's waist, since that was the treasure passed down in Haben Castle. Are you trying to appoint Raon as the next Castellan? That's a bit. It should require more consideration. The snowbound blade was the symbol of Haben's Castellan. Granting that sword pretty much meant that he acknowledged Raon as his successor. The officers looked at Tarion with trembling eyes, but he casually sipped his tea. What nonsense are you spouting? Millen frowned, looking around at the officers. This sword isn't a relic, but a symbol. I'm giving Raon something else. Something else? This. He took out thin, snow-white armor and put it on the table. It was sparkling like a star, with a green gem embedded in the center. Ah. This was what you meant. Yes. This is the inner armor made from an Orc Lord's magic stone, the White Spirit armor. Inner armor was armor that was worn inside the clothes. Soldiers usually wore one, since the thin armor was capable of defending against blades piercing it. For outsiders, it's a more precious item than the snowbound blade, which is just a symbol. However, I figured I should reward him at least this much, considering his deeds. Millen gently caressed the White Spirit armor. He seriously doesn't take care of himself. I'll only be relieved once he wears this. I agree. Tarion smiled lightheartedly and raised his hand. We don't mind it either. Since the castle would have been annihilated if it weren't for Raon, any amount of reward wouldn't be enough. The White Spirit armor would be the best present for the boy. Since the White Spirit armor's present and future owner both agreed, the officers also nodded with a smile. Then that's decided, and I think it would be best to hold the festival for around 5 days. However, rather than starting it right now, we should wait for about 1 week. Can I say something? The Snow Strikers' leader, Edquil, raised his hand despite having remained silent. What is it? It's about Sir Raon. Sir Raon? Did he say Sir Raon? Because he suddenly called him Sir, the officer's eyes widened. Didn't you say he was a mercenary? Yes, I did. It's possible that such a genius exists among the mercenaries, but the martial arts he used wasn't something ordinary. It was a swordsmanship developed over a long period of time, a martial art that a normal mercenary wouldn't be able to acquire. Are you questioning his identity? I'm saying that we should make it clear. Millen licked his lips and looked at Edquil. Judging from his peaceful eyes, he wasn't trying to attack him but just trying to confirm. I'm also pretty curious about that. The wolf mercenary Captain Beta locked his fingers together on his hand to cover his head, then snickered. Because we all already know that Raon isn't a mercenary. Well, that's true. I'm fine as long as he doesn't have a nasty origin, such as the 5 demons. Don't say that. There's no way that Raon is from the 5 demons. With Edquil's prompting, people started making guesses about Raon's identity one after the other. Silence. Millen tapped the desk to shut everyone's mouth. Just as you said, Raon isn't your average mercenary. In fact, I can't hide it anymore after what he accomplished. What you know for sure is that he's always been sincere, ever since he's arrived here. The officers straightened their backs, realizing the meaning of his firm voice. He will reveal his identity himself one day, so just wait until then. And I can guarantee his identity, that he isn't from the dark side. You don't need to worry about it. Milan looked at Edquil, who mentioned it first. His clear eyes were like when he was full of dreams and passion in the past. I see. Edquil smiled slightly, as if a heavy burden had been lifted. Even though Milan had known him for a long time, he still couldn't tell what he was thinking. Start the festival's preparation right away if you don't have any more questions. Milan vigorously hit the table and stood up. Let's hold a magnificent festival, enough to recover from the fatigue and pain so far. Inside a dim room, illuminated by a small lighting hanging down from the ceiling, two people were sitting at a grotesque table that looked like it was made from human skulls. The man sitting on the right was covering his body with thick robe of darkness, wearing a skull mask with blue flame burning in the eyes. A blonde staff was standing next to him on its own, with a dark and wicked light hovering around it. On the other hand, the woman with thin fingers sitting next to him was wearing a deep blue hat with a brim and an old woman's mask with a long nose. A wooden staff made of withered material was floating behind her. It's a failure. The woman wearing an old woman's mask clicked her tongue. Are you talking about Haben Castle? The man in the skull mask raised his chin. Yes. The blue shamanic demon and the voracious ice demon. Those worthless scum died. How did they fail? Do you even need to ask? They must have just charged Haben's Castellan without thinking. The voracious ice demon might have done that, but the blue shamanic demon isn't such a simpleton. The man shook his head and tapped the table made of skulls. Anyway, it's too late now. Since they discovered that we made our move, the Haben Castellan won't move his heavy ass anymore, and the 6 kings will also send reinforcements. What are you thinking about so hard? The magic stone of the Green King has also appeared in the west, so it shouldn't matter that much. I wanted the Siren's vessel more than the magic stone, since such a talent isn't common even on a continental scale. The talent of powerful might and overflowing mana could be obtained anywhere. However, the quality of the Siren's embodiment that controlled people's bodies and minds couldn't be found so easily. It's an ability that can realize genocide and mass brainwashing. We have to obtain it at all costs. But it can't be helped. Now isn't the time. No. Because we are in our current situation, we have to make our move. The man in the skull mask flicked his finger. Along with the thudding sound of bone hitting bone, a wriggling liquid similar to slime soared up onto the table. Its insides couldn't be seen because it had a cloudy gray color. Doppelganger? What are you planning to do with that idiot? Unless there's someone that can wear the doppelganger's helmet. I modified it myself. The man narrowed his eyes, looking at the doppelganger that was trying to swallow one of the table's skulls. This once can perfectly reproduce the words and actions of the human it swallows. Even family wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Who? The eyes behind the old woman mask sparkled with a blue light. Is it absorbing the human's characteristics upon digestion? It looks like you've gone as far as modifying the cells. There's a time limit, but this one should be able to bring us the Siren's vessel. What's the possibility of Milan noticing it? None. The skull-masked man shook his head with a confident gaze. Unless it's a monster that can read into the human's temperament itself, no one will be able to discover it. A festival was held at Haben Castle. Simple festivals that lasted for one day after a wave had happened multiple times before, but because it was the first time a festival was held for 5 days in a row, the castle's mood was heated enough to melt the perpetual snow. The festival became more and more heated over time, and it reached its peak on the 5th day, when the awarding ceremony was held. Dorian and Edquil, who jumped down the castle to fight against the Ice Troll Lord, stepped forward. Yes. Dorian and Edquil walked up the platform, answering the call from Tarion, who was conducting the ceremony. These two people, who put their lives on the line to defend Haben Castle against the Ice Troll Lord and the monsters, will be granted Haben Castle's excellent blade and some gold. Thank you. Thank you. Milan was standing on the platform to personally award them the sword and gold. Dorian, you've completely changed from when you arrived here for the first time. I hope you keep getting better in the future. Yes. Edquil, I don't know what changed in your mind, but it doesn't seem to be a bad change. Keep refining yourself. Yes. The two bowed to Milland and turned around to bow at the spectators. Woa! The pride of our third scouting party. Dorian! Dorian! Leader! You are the best. The scouts and the swordsmen shouted Dorian and Edquill's names and cheered. Next is the final one. Tarion cleared his throat and looked at Raon, who was sitting at the right end. The invincible swordsman that saved 30 people's lives during the wave, then killed Eden's demons and the Ice Troll Lord on his own. Raon, step forward. Woa! Raon! 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 The sword demon of Haben Castle. Troll Lord Slayer. As soon as he called Raon's name, all the soldiers surrounding the festival stood up to applaud and burst into a roar. Ha! Raon bowed slightly at the people cheering for him, then walked up on the platform. Thanks to your brave and gallant actions, we've managed to minimize our losses. I express my gratitude as Haben's Castellan. Milland smiled widely for the first time and bowed to him. Commander! Since Raon didn't expect him to do that while everyone was watching, he grew flustered and bowed in return. You don't need to bow back. That's right. You deserve more than the Castellan's bow. Raon! Stand there proudly. The others were smiling lightheartedly, as if they knew it was going to happen. The hero that saved Haben Castle twice from the crisis will be granted Haben Castle's relic, the white spirit armor, and some gold. Milland presented the white armor. It was sparkling like gold, and a hexagonal green gem was embedded at the center of the chest. You tend to disregard your own body too much. Since this white spirit armor can be worn inside your clothes, you shall wear it all the time. Thank you. Raon could tell that it was a precious treasure at a glance. Since he also realized why he was given the armor, warmth could be felt in his chest. Woa! Raon! 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 Please keep defending Haben Castle in the future. Once he turned around, the crowd burst in a roar that shook the entire castle. It was loud enough to make the approaching monsters run away. Thank you. Raon expressed his gratitude to the crowds before walking down the platform. Since we might never have another day like today, make sure to enjoy it thoroughly until the end. Next up is... Raon checked the white spirit armor, listening to Tarion announcing the next event. I feel like I've seen this somewhere. It wasn't about the clothes, but the emerald-like green gem embedded at the center that felt familiar to him for some reason. Ah! He finally remembered. He could feel a similar energy as the Goblin King's magic stone that he still had in his chest. How pathetic of you to realize it only now, with such an intense stench of orc coming from it. Wrath clicked his tongue, saying that he was so insensitive. Orc? Yes. This is the magic stone of an orc lord. I see. Unlike the Goblin King's magic stone, which was hot enough to burn his hand, the orc lord's magic stone was imbued with a rock-solid energy. That difference was the reason he didn't realize it was a magic stone at first glance. I guess they were aiming for this. He was wondering why Eden had attacked Haben Castle, but it seemed they were probably aiming for that magic stone. Its energy didn't lose at all when compared to the Goblin King's magic stone. Raon put his hand on the magic stone in order to examine the energy it contained more closely. Swirl! The ring of fire started to rotate like crazy, and covering his vision in white. The world was changing. He could see a snow field covered in blood. The corpses of humans and orcs were piled up like a mountain, and on top of that hill of death, a blond swordsman was clashing his sword against the axe of an orc bigger than an ogre. Flame burst up in a spiral from the swordsman's blade, and brutal combative energy was overflowing from the orc's axe. The clash between the two monsters split the heaven and collapsed the ground. After hundreds or thousands of clashes, the blade of flame finally sliced through the axe and beheaded the orc. The orc was smiling, and the swordsman gave a bitter smile. The swordsman turned around to look at Raon. Everything except for his red eyes was covered in darkness. The golden flame emanating from his eyes covered his vision. The world changed once again, and Raon could see the festival full of smiles and life once again. You already have the Ring of Fire, 5 stars, You already have the 10,000 Flames cultivation, 3 stars. Not enough accomplishments. The message he saw at the first judgment ceremony appeared once again. Raon swallowed hard. Did Sieghart's ancestor fight the Orc Lord here? He couldn't see it properly, but the flame imbued in his sword and his unkempt blonde hair looked exactly like the man he saw during the judgment ceremony. Where did you go just now and what did you see? Wrath's flustered eyes were trembling. What? Your soul left your body just now. It left? Yes. Your body was an empty shell just now. Was it not just an illusion? As Raon's eyes widened in confusion, the second set of messages appeared. You have faced, ... The proficiency of the Ring of Fire has increased drastically. The proficiency of the 10,000 Flames cultivation has increased drastically. Tisk. Tisk. Raon licked his lips, watching Dorian sing a strange song on the platform. He was seriously bad at it, but that wasn't what he was thinking about. So, Sieghart's ancestor could also use the Ring of Fire. There was no way that he got the message about the Ring of Fire for no reason. It was certain that the blonde man could use not only the 10,000 Flames cultivation, but also the Ring of Fire. I never heard that Sieghart had the Ring of Fire. Where he learned the Ring of Fire in his previous life was completely unrelated to Sieghart. Something must have happened. There was no way the hallucination had appeared for no reason. There must have been a story behind it. He had a premonition that he needed to find the end of that hallucination in order to reach the extremity of the Ring of Fire and the 10,000 Flames cultivation. That's one more thing I need to do. He already had so many tasks piled up, yet the task of looking for his ancestor's secret had been added. He wanted to ignore it, but he couldn't do that because it seemed to contain the secret of the 10,000 Flames cultivation and the Ring of Fire. But what I need to do first remains the same. Restoring Sylvia's status to the direct line. While the revenge against Darius was something he needed to do at all costs, restoring her status was the most urgent one to achieve. I need to become an official swordsman first, then. While Raon was planning ahead, Dorian was chased out from singing and Yua walked up the platform while fluttering her twin tails. Hello? Yua waved her hands and smiled brightly. Whoa! It's Yua. Yua. Finally, please soothe our ears. Hearing her sweet voice contrasting with the surroundings, the soldiers cheered even more loudly than during a battle. It's a new song, so please listen carefully. Yua looked back to signal the soldiers holding guitars and violins, and they started playing the music. Tap tap. Unlike the last time's cheerful music, a majestic flow calmed down the festival's atmosphere. The winter comes so suddenly. The cold winter is difficult to endure for the brave ones, the strong ones and the wise ones alike. The music and lyrics were unexpected, but Yua's clear voice captivated the ears. A young swordsman visits the stagnant winter castle. He is powerful yet humble, brave yet kind, and was capable of learning despite being wise. His chest wavered. Her voice throbbed his entire body, resounding like a drum from a high mountain. The aurora of dawn dwells inside the blade of the young swordsman, standing alone under the destroyed castle walls. The aloof and beautiful light made the monsters of the northern mountain disappear, leaving only their footprints behind. It was Raon's story. The heroic tale described by Yua's pleasant voice was the story he started in Haben Castle. Even the demons that hid their true intentions with masks and helmets disappeared, unable to break the young swordsman's resolve. Hearing her delighted voice, the previous battle was presented inside his head. A message appeared in front of Raon's eyes, who was grasping his throbbing chest. The first song of triumph has been created to sing your accomplishments. The hero's road has been opened. Chapter 138. Hero's Road? Raon's eyes widened when he read the message. He was confused, since he couldn't figure out its meaning. What is ah? It was when he was trying to read the message once again that another message appeared. Your soul level has increased. All stats have increased. A thrill pierced throughout his body, like lightning. It felt like electricity entering through his head had reached the soles of his feet. He had the impression that his soul had reached a higher dimension for an instant. TSK, what a damn lucky guy. Wrath frowned, glaring at the message. It was an extremely annoyed expression. What is all this? It's just what it says. Your soul is imbued with heroic karma. Why? Why? Power dwells inside words. And a song is even more powerful than that. Since the Pineapple Girl song described your heroic side, the level of your soul has increased thanks to that. With only that much? Obviously, that's not all. Wrath turned his head to look at Yua, who was still singing. Remember what I told you before. The Pineapple Girl is talented at singing. But she is actually even more talented than what the King of Essence expected back then. Your accomplishment managed to gain such a power because it was her that created the song and sang it in front of many people. Which means, yes, the reason your soul's level and stats have increased is thanks to her singing about you. You should be grateful. Ha! The more you display your heroic side, and the more her song spreads to the people, the more your soul's level, stats, and traits will increase drastically. That's impressive. Raon exclaimed in admiration. He noticed it when he was emotionally touched, but calling her a genius wasn't enough to describe Yua's talent in singing. People often said that an excellent bard song had a soul, and apparently that was what he just heard. Those steps will be remembered forever through the winter's melody. Yua perfectly finished the song of triumph and smiled brightly. Wha? Yua. This uncle holds you so dear. Our Yua is too good to stay in this place. Let's send her to the continent. Yua. 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 The soldiers that heard Yua's song stood up to break out in applause and loud cheering, to the point that it felt like the ground was shaking. Thank you. Yua slightly bowed in 3 different directions, then walked down the platform towards the table where Raon and Dorian were sitting. How was it? Wow. You were really amazing. I'm so impressed. You are almost as good as me. Dorian blabbered about some ridiculous things and gave a thumbs up. What gave you the idea of writing a song? My grandfather always said I should be thankful to the people that fight here. Yua smiled cheerfully and waved her hand to her grandfather, the manager of the branch of Frost standing on the right. I heard the swordsman Raon struggled a lot this time, so I tried making a song from what I heard and saw. I see. Raon knelt to meet Yua's eyes. Her round eyes sparkled like a rabbit's. Thank you. It was really nice. Okay. Yua flapped her hair and hopped. Then, come to our restaurant later. To increase the sales, right? Wow, you understand it so quickly now. Of course I do. Raon smiled, watching Yua's hair flapping around. Then, make sure to visit later. Yua waved her hand, and ran towards the manager, who was waiting for her. Raon. Wrath stuck his head out from the bracelet. What's up? A human being should pay back the kindness they have received. He was right. However, because it was a demon king who was saying it, Raon remained speechless. From the way the King of Essence saw it, you've received a huge favor from the Pineapple Girl. Raon could expect what he was going to say next with his mouth of ice. Earlier is better when it comes to repaying a favor. You have to do it right now. Go to the branch of Frost right now and order all the food. Ha! Raon shook his head looking at Wrath, rolling his eyes. And you've also received a favor from the King of Essence. It's an extremely huge favor on top of that. What favor are you talking about? The King of Essence taught you Glacier. But I already paid the price for that. Do you seriously believe a single pineapple pizza is as valuable as such a great ability? How are you even acting exactly the way I expected you to? It felt like he really became the monarch of Devilldom through hopscotch, since he couldn't hide his intentions at all. I'm able to hide my intentions, I'm simply not hiding them. Demons are true to their desires, they don't tell any lies when they talk about them. And the King of Essence has never once lied, even in Devilldom. That was true. Wrath had never lied before, although he avoided speaking in some cases. The reason Raon believed that he was actually a king was because he had never lied before. If you understand, let's get going. Since the branch of Frost has been full for 4 days straight, it should have free spaces today. All right. Raon sighed softly. Since he was helped by both Wrath and Yua, it seemed to be a good idea to repay them adequately. Honestly, food was an extremely cheap price to pay for what he got. You made a great decision. Wrath giggled and surged into the bracelet. Where are you going? Once Raon stood up, Dorian raised his head. I'm going to eat at the branch of frost since it's been a while. Let's go together. Ha! Dorian tilted his head instead of standing up. Why? They are closed today since they've been open for 4 days. That's why Yua told you to visit later, you know? Ah, is that so? Raon blinked his eyes and looked at Wrath, who was dancing on the bracelet. They are closed today. What is this bullshit? Wrath started scratching the table like a cat, his hand made of coldness, and shouted. Are you plotting together to make the King of Essence starve? Why are you getting in the way of the King of Essence each time I try to eat? It's your destiny. Let's go to the soldiers' cafeteria instead. Raon snickered and headed towards the soldiers' cafeteria. Onion stew, dry and crumbling bread, overcooked chicken, and unsavory sauce. Today's set menu is the worst. How do you even know about today's menu? Wrath had memorized the entire cafeteria menu, which changed every day, as if he actually liked it despite what he said. He was truly a weirdo. Saiyan Canyon was filled with ferocious and powerful monsters. A tremendous number of monsters were dashing between the plunging cliffs, like a river flooding through a broken dam. And on the opposite side of the canyon, where the monsters were flooding towards, there was a wall of humans. Stalwart warriors holding double-edged axes and thick greatswords were standing in a line, staring at the monsters charging towards them. VRRRRR. A majestic sound resounded from a horn, and the warriors brandished their weapons. Charge! Kill them all! The gigantic middle-aged man standing at the front dashed into the wave of monsters, slamming down an axe the size of a human body. Wham! Monsters and the ground exploded together, signaling the great war between humans and monsters. Let's go! Shred them to pieces. Wipe them out, don't leave a single one of them alive. Wah-ha-ha! The warriors swung their swords and axes with fierce smiles on their faces. The dry canyon was gradually filled with the blood, fervor, and the exhilaration of battle. And there was one swordswoman that stood out on that battlefield, where both humans and monsters were abnormally large. Her black hair and black eyes displayed her elegant beauty as the swordswoman dominated the battlefield. The powerful strength and the systematic trajectory of her strikes quickly turned the monsters into a pool of blood. She was the smallest one on the battlefield, yet she was the most gallant of them all. Even the monsters fell back upon facing her ferociousness. However, the black-haired swordswoman didn't seem satisfied with that, as she kept moving non-stop to smash the monsters. The battle that started at daybreak continued until evening, and the canyon was filled with the corpses of warriors and monsters. Enough time had passed for even the seasoned warriors to be exhausted, yet the black-haired swordswoman hadn't slowed down at all since the beginning. She kept beheading the monsters and crushing their hearts. One might think she had a berserker spell cast on her, but her eyes were as clear as the moonlight coming from the full moon. We won. It's our victory. Yeah. The canyon's battle ended in the humans' victory, and the defeated monsters returned to their barren land over the blood of their fallen fellows. Huff. The black-haired swordswoman finally stopped her sword and raised her head. Her blade spilled more blood than anyone else that day, and the number of corpses fallen under her was the biggest of them all. You look so excited, Martha. A middle-aged man, who seemed to be the leader of the warriors, walked towards her from behind as she was catching her breath. It was an overwhelming performance, enough to satisfy me. Are you trying to catch up to your head of house? The middle-aged man put his bloody axe on his shoulder and smiled broadly. He was the ruler of Saiyan Canyon, Kamane's Castellan, and the strongest warrior, Baruan. I shall catch up to him. But I have another mountain that I need to cross before that. Martha frowned, shaking off the blood that was on her sword. A mountain to be crossed? It's a damn fucking high mountain. Are you saying that there's someone stronger than you among your peers? Baruan's eyes widened. Martha was already a proper warrior when she arrived. He was wondering why she was desperately practicing, but it seemed she had a rival. 3 times. No, I lost 4 times. Martha murmured that it was all she could say since she kept running after that. Don't worry. Baruan smiled and tapped Martha's shoulder. You've experienced countless battles since you arrived here and trained your body and mind harder than anyone else. No matter who that might be, he must be weaker than you are now. No. Martha adamantly shook her head. He is the real deal, the first that I've met. He is the true monster, different from the fakes people call geniuses or prodigies. I don't think I can catch up to him even if I train several times harder than what I'm doing right now. That much? Baruan narrowed his eyes. Martha was even more talented than his son. He became curious about the boy that made such a genius experience a sense of defeat. I can feel it with my skin. Martha grasped her arm, which had goosebumps on it. That bastard's getting stronger as he breathes, even at this very moment. She did her best to train, but she didn't think she could win against Raon. She wanted to win against him wonderfully and cancel the promise that made it so that she would obey his commands, yet she just couldn't imagine winning against him. Moreover, her true enemy, the white blood religion, was incomparably stronger than Raon. It was impossible for her to destroy the white blood religion and find her mother if she couldn't even win against Raon. What is his name? Martha turned around, looking at Baruan's surprised eyes. She created an energy layer so that no one else could hear them, and slowly opened her mouth. Raon. Raon Zighart. She clenched her fist and continued. He is my benefactor and saved my life, and he is the man I need to win against at all costs. That doesn't seem to be the only reason. Baruan chuckled. Fine. I'll train you personally for the rest of your stay here. What? Why all of a sudden? In return, you shall bring it to me. He slammed the ground with his axe and raised his chin. The news of your victory against the boy named Raon. There was a desert called Lavine at the northwest of the continent. That particular terrain, covered with white sand, was also called as white sand instead of Lavine. Despite the color, it was still a desert. However, because it was unexpectedly rich in resources, the humans and monsters coexisting added into its strange characteristics. A small village existed at the entrance of that desert. It wasn't a natural place, but a temporary village created by the Marco Company, one of the 6 companies of the continents, for Lavine Desert's pioneering project. Inside that village, a blue-haired young man was busily moving around. Bayan. Come this way. Bayan. It's strange over here. Hey. Bayan. The people in the village waved their hands at him, calling his name. Arg, stop calling me. You can do it on your own. The blue-haired young man called Bayan frowned, stomping on the ground. Despite acting angry, he still went to the right to flatten the land, then went to the left to build the column. He helped everyone. Bayan. A sand scorpion has appeared. Come here quickly. Damn it. Why is everyone looking for me? Bayan shouted as if he wasn't going to help, but he still put down the column to run towards the village's entrance. His mouth kept complaining, but his body was helping with everything asked of him. A smart-looking man wearing a monocle licked his lips, watching Bayan run outside the village. That's unexpected. He is far different from his first impression. It must be all thanks to the president's teachings. The old merchant smiled, wearing a turban around his head. Teachings? I didn't teach him anything. The current president of the Marco Company, Lenny Tun, closed his eyes. Bayan was already completely zealous when he first arrived there. He had been fighting monsters or helping with the pioneering in the daytime, and he had been training himself during the night for over half a year already. It was a schedule a normal person wouldn't be able to carry out, which expressed how much of a desire Bayan had to get stronger. He is an amazing fellow. He seems difficult to get along with at first, but he is actually kind-hearted, and his power makes it difficult to believe he is only 16 years old. Ah! The old man just remembered something and clapped his hands. Now that I think about it, did you hear about the incident in Haben Castle? The story about a swordsman around Bayan's age who defended the destroyed castle wall on his own? Yes. But there was an even bigger incident after that. A bigger incident? Yes. I heard that Eden attacked them using an ice troll lord. Moreover, they used the opportunity when Milan was outside with Haben Castle's elites, and the blonde swordsman defended against them on his own. The old man told him all about the incident that happened in Haben Castle a few months ago. I can't believe it. That's what I thought at first, but it appears to be true. I heard that all the soldiers in Haben Castle witnessed it. Then. Lennyton pointed at Bayan, who was entering the village, and smiled mischievously. Tell him that story you just told me. What? Why are you asking me to do that? I want to see his reaction. Oh, I see. I'll do it. Realizing his intentions, the old man walked up to Bayan and told him about the story from Haben Castle. That damn bastard. Bayan's green eyes sparkled like the desert sand. I knew he would do that. That guy never sits quietly. He looked happy as he smiled, his clenched fists trembling. Is he the gold that you mentioned you would catch up to? Lennyton was standing in front of Bayan, having approached him at some point. Yes, he is. What is his name? It's Raon. He must be strong. He is strong. Judging from the story, he must have gotten even stronger now. Then why do you look so happy? Lennyton narrowed his eyes, watching Bayan be filled with joy. Shouldn't you be angry or depressed if your objective has gotten even stronger? No. Catching up to him is worth it exactly because he is strong, and he will get even stronger. Bayan adamantly shook his head. A ray of light shone in his clear, emerald-like eyes. If Raon doesn't get stronger, then my goal won't move from there. The stronger he gets, the more I will progress alongside him. I see. Lennyton's mouth curved up. He looked at Bayan with a delighted smile. Well, I actually realized that because I met him. You make me want to meet this Raon boy. I'm sure you will be amazed. But I'm more interested in you. What? There's few people that truly know his weakness and praise his rival. If I had to make an investment, you would have been my target. Ah. Since it wasn't something he'd expected, Bayan's eyes widened. But it looks like you are very close to Raon. It's interesting that you are rivals and close friends at the same time. See close friends? Not at all. We are just enemies. It doesn't look like it, though. You must be close friends from the way you smiled earlier. Lennyton raised his chin while smiling mischievously. I told you we aren't. Bayan shouted loudly. I have no intentions of being friends with a guy like him. In a yellow forest where the sounds of bugs, reptiles, and monsters resounded throughout the place in disharmony, a purple-eyed swordswoman with her silver hair tied to the back was dashing through the jungle, twisted like a coiled snake. Despite her noble appearance, her natural movements made it look like she was part of the jungle. Key. When the silver-haired swordswoman tried to pass next to the swamp, a dark attribute monster with a crocodile's appearance, a crocodark, popped out from under the swamp and opened its mouth. Kring. As if she knew it was coming, she drew her sword from around her waist and swung it. The silver frost spreading from the blade brushed past the ground and froze both the monster and the swamp. Kia. Key. The other monsters that followed it were also frozen stiff. The silver-haired swordswoman stomped the ground, looking at the monsters crawling out the swamp one after another. Along with the sound of a thud that resounded throughout the earth, the silver frost spread from where she was standing to completely freeze the surrounding area. Huff! The silver-haired swordswoman turned around midair and dashed over the frozen swamp. Small birds and insects flocked over her head like a swarm of bees, but they were all pushed back before reaching her because of her frozen breath. As such, she kept running in a straight line until the village came into her sight. A warrior holding a spear and a shield, wearing a brown and red wooden mask, appeared in front of her. Qua! The warrior thrust his spear, surrounded by an intense red aura. When the powerful strike was rushing towards her, a wind of frost stormed over her blade. Kurring! The silver frost spread out in concentric circles and froze everything, including the warrior. Ku! The masked warrior could only groan, his legs and arms completely frozen. The silver-haired swordswoman nodded slightly at him, then entered the village he was guarding. Whoa! She didn't even take 6 hours to cross the jungle. You're in first place, Runan. Even the adults don't usually have a record like that. It's not just the adults, they need to be at least at a warrior captain's level. Runan. You really are amazing. Instead of attacking her, the people at the village entrance surrounded her and cheered. Thank you. Runan nodded at the villagers without showing any expression. I'm looking forward to the future if you've already reached this level. I know, right? Was there anyone that was this strong at 16 years of age? Wasn't our chief the only one? People smiled, telling her that she would become the most powerful woman. There is one. There's a boy that is way stronger than me. Runan joined their conversation, which was a rare occurrence. Way stronger? Than you? Runan nodded. That means. Did you come here to win against him? A tall, red-haired woman moved next to Runan. Her face couldn't be seen because she was wearing a wooden mask, but the pressure spilling from her was as majestic as the ocean. No. No? Then why? I want to get strong enough to help him from the side. Runan repeated exactly what she used to say, like a habit from back home. I see. The masked woman chuckled and slapped her back roughly. Having a goal is a good thing, regardless of what it is. However, your talent can reach way further than that. Don't be too focused on what's right in front of you. She spoke, then waited for the next candidate to cross the jungle. Ray was the tribe's chief, and a master-level warrior. Looking at her back, Runan climbed the tree in front of the entrance. Shall I eat one, since it's been a while? Since she'd finished crossing the jungle, which could be called Kadam Jungle's trial, she felt like she could indulge herself in the luxury of eating the beet ice cream. But there's not many of them left. While she was swinging her feet in the air as she pondered, a young villager's voice could be heard. It was Lame, who guided her the first time she arrived. Wow, when did you get here? Caw. The sound was coming from a crow behind Lame. Ha? Why are you sticking to me? Do you like me or something? Caw. It looked like Lame had become friends with a jungle crow that came into the village, as they were cheerfully playing together. Fine. I'll make the difficult decision of raising you. Let's decide on a name first. Lame licked his lips for a while, before clapping his hands. Raon. Since you are as dark as a shadow, Raon seems to be a great name. As soon as Runan heard the name Raon, she jumped down the tree. She went to where she heard Lame's voice, and she found Lame facing a jungle crow with feathers twisted like a vine. Runan? Weren't you in the middle of a trial? I finished. Runan replied simply, staring gently at the crow. Caw. The crow turned its head and cawed, as if it were asking her why she was staring at it. Poof. Runan turned her head to look at Lame. Gasp. Lame stepped backward, facing Runan's unusually intense gaze. What's up? If I made a mistake. What was its name? Runan pointed at the crow, taking short steps. It's Raon. Change the name. No, but I already named him Raon. Change the name. But he is dark like a shadow. It's common to name black ones Raon. Change the name. Her purple eyes narrowed frighteningly. Why so suddenly? Change the name. The young man's eyes trembled, Runan pressuring him more and more intensely. Why was she doing that? 4 months had passed since the war against Eden. Likely because many monsters died during the war against the Lord after the wave, no monster showed up around the castle anymore. They kept scouting constantly, but there was no sign of gathering monsters or anything significant, and Haben Castle was more peaceful than ever. However, unlike the others, the person that created that peace, Raon, was busy every day. And the reason for that was obviously because of his training. As soon as his arm recovered from its injury, as quickly as a troll, even, he stayed in the training ground every day to keep swinging his sword the entire day. Huff. After training the 10,000 flames cultivation in his swordsmanship until the moon rose, Raon raised his body and exhaled heavily. It's difficult. He'd witnessed a fight between a blonde swordsman and an orc lord upon touching the jewel in the white spirit armor. He was trying to reproduce the 10,000 flames cultivation technique that the swordsman had used, but it wasn't going as he wished. It seemed to be because his swordsmanship and aura were at a way higher level than where Raon was currently at. The Orc Lord was extremely powerful as well, I guess. The Orc Lord that fought against the blonde swordsman didn't seem to be a simple monster, as his pressure was similar to at least a warrior at the master's level. Neither of them were something Raon could fight against in his current state. But I'll still continue. Raon never gave up, in either his previous or his current life. He believed that he would one day reach that man's level if he kept constantly training his sword and tempering his body. Sir Raon. As he was about to start swinging his sword once again, Dorian opened the door to the training grounds and stuck his head in. It's time for the night watch. Ah. Raon sighed sadly, looking at the moon in the sky. It was time for his mission. All right, let's go. He sheathed his sword and followed Dorian towards the castle wall. What does the young master think about while you keep repeating the same technique over and over again? I don't really think about anything. I'm just practicing. Ha! It was just a normal answer, yet Dorian's jaw dropped. When you said that you were just practicing, you looked like a person from a completely different world. I don't think I can do that at all. Murmuring that he couldn't stop himself anymore, he took out an herbal juice from his belly pocket and started to drink it. Do you want some? No, thanks. Raon shook his head and climbed the castle wall. The clear moon was floating in the night sky, not a single trace of clouds in sight. He could even see the white mist surrounding Stalin Mountain in the far distance. It's nice weather. Thinking that he would be able to enjoy the beautiful scenery during the watch, he started using Glacier. He didn't need to stand there doing nothing just because it was a mission. Since he had to watch his surroundings, it was the perfect time to expand his ocean of perception. By the way, Raon looked at Wrath, who was hanging around his wrist, while observing his surroundings through the ocean of perception. He is rather silent nowadays. Except for throwing a tantrum to eat at the branch of frost, he had been so silent recently, to the point that it was strange. It'd be better if he picked a fight. Since making a bet or fighting against him would easily increase his stats, he missed him picking fights. While he was licking his lip, Wrath rose up like smoke from the flower bracelet. After staring for a while at the distant Stalin Mountain, he turned his head. Raon Zighart. I have something to tell you. I can't eat right now. I'm in the middle of a mission. That's not what I was going to say. Is the King of Essence a useless mouth to you? Were you not? Ugh. Seriously, you. Ha. Wrath grit his teeth. He narrowed his eyes to glare at Raon, then started sighing. What's the matter then? Make a bet with the King of Essence for the first time in a long time. A bet? Did he just say a bet? The cheating gamblers said that the most difficult part about cheating was to get a doormat to participate. And now, the doormat just walked up to him and straight up participated in the gamble. Raon's eyes were covered in red fervor. Was the doormat Wrath striking again? Chapter 139. Bet? What kind of bet do you want all of a sudden? Raon narrowed his eyes, looking at Wrath as he burned with frost. It's a very simple bet. Instead of responding immediately, Wrath looked up at the sky once again, then continued. Was that pointy ear's exam to survive here for a year? Yes, and there's less than half a year left now. It didn't feel like it had been long, since there were multiple incidents, but it had already been 7 months since he'd arrived at Haben Castle. That meant there weren't even 5 months left until the end of the exam. That's the one. The King of Essence is going to bet that you will leave this place before you fulfill the remaining duration. What? Raon looked down on Wrath, as if he heard something ridiculous. Are you serious right now? Of course. A demon king never goes back on his word. But I saw you going back on your word. Silence. I keep bets, at least. Was he really a doormat? There weren't even 5 months left, and he was in a comfortable situation where he just needed to train before returning since the wave was already over and Eden was defeated. That was why he was wondering why he was making such a bet. It wasn't normal. Wrath was a doormat, but he wasn't an idiot. It was certain that he had information Raon wasn't aware of, if he was making such a bet. Do you accept? Show it to me for now. All right. Wrath came out from the bracelet completely, and a message appeared in front of his eyes. Wrath is suggesting a bet. Condition, do not leave the Haben Castle for the rest of the duration. Success, all stats +5, a title. Failure, creation of 15 points of the emotion of wrath. There was a significant increase of wrath points on failure, but the reward was just as high. Considering you are making such a bet, I guess Eden is going to attack us or something, right? I wonder. Wrath didn't respond. Since he didn't tell lies, he was using his ability to avoid talking to his disadvantage. Raon licked his lips, looking at the message. The probability of Eden returning isn't exactly high. After the information about Eden's demons targeting Haben Castle got around, the combat units of 2 of the 6 kings had come close. If Eden had common sense, there was no way they would start attacking Haben Castle for a while. No. They don't have such a thing. Raon shook his head. Eden's demons were some of the craziest people on the continent. They were crazy enough to target the Orc Lord's magic stone he had, regardless of who was defending it. Well, that should be fine. Trials and hardships served as a basis for quick growth. If Eden attacked again, he just needed to rend them with power. Fine. I accept the bet. It's an excellent choice, more than you deserve. Raon accepted the bet, and the message appeared to announce the establishment of it. The bet with has been established. He raised his chin, looking at the message fading away. Since the bet is in place, the King of Essence shall give you a piece of advice. Advice? Yes. The King of Essence is giving you this advice because we ate all of those delicacies together. Delicacies, huh? It was such a trivial reason. What is the advice? You'd better leave this place right away. And you should bring everyone else that you care for along with you. Wrath's serious blue eyes shone in a deadly light. After all, the castle itself is going to disappear soon. Damn it! Wrath slammed the ground with his icy hand. Despite his confident statement, nothing happened for a month. It looked like his plan had completely failed, since he would sometimes sigh heavily while saying things like what, why is it going back to sleep, or how is this happening? That's why you shouldn't have started a bet. Raon clicked his tongue. It seemed like Wrath really was a doormat, since he was going to gain the rewards without doing anything. The King of Essence didn't expect that lazy, good-for-nothing to go back to sleep. He is seriously a sleepyhead. Sleepyhead? Stop talking about him. It's frustrating. Wrath turned his head around, saying that it was irritating. Judging from his reaction, something dangerous surely existed in the surrounding area. It doesn't matter anymore, though. It seemed he could rest assured now, since Wrath's expression looked like he was chewing shit. Raon casually warmed himself up and drew his sword. He touched the Orc Lord's magic stone on the white spirit armor and closed his eyes. Even though the hallucination hadn't appeared again, he wasn't disappointed since the trajectory of the sword the blonde swordsman had shown him still remained in his head. Ha! Imagining the technique in the head, Raon opened his eyes. He calmly caught his breath and held his sword around chest height. Whirr! The thrust looked like an arrow leaving a bowstring. The blade, imbued with flame, pierced through the cold air of daybreak. Slow. Raon bit his lips. Even though the trajectory was similar, it was slower and less precise than the blonde swordsman's blade. Let's try again. He pulled his sword back, then thrust along the same trajectory. It seemed to be a bit faster, but it was still much slower than him. Again. Raon repeated the thrust over and over before he had any amount of progress. Ha! Raon caught his breath and straightened his back. He had been practicing nothing but the 10,000 Flames cultivation stab for about 2 hours. It got slightly better. Thanks to the repeated training, he got a little bit closer to his sword. The speed had increased, and he could imbue his sword with aura more meticulously. You are slow, really slow. The King of Essence would have already completed that technique. Wrath pouted, dissatisfied with Raon's actions. Stop pointlessly venting your anger. Ugh. If it's already over, how about giving up on the bet right now? Shut up. The King of Essence is a demon king that doesn't know the term giving up. The King of Essence will never drop out of the bet. What an indecisive demon king. Indecisive? Did you just call the King of Essence indecisive? Wrath left the bracelet with a trembling hand of ice. Yes, I did. Back in Devildom, one of the King of Essence's aliases was the Resolute Demon King. The King of Essence was admired by the demons with his adamant judgment, which never went back on a decision. I gotta keep training. Listen to me. As Raon regained his posture, Wrath yelled and jumped at him. Whir! He surrounded his entire body while emanating a threatening amount of coldness. It looked like he was extremely angry, because he was going to have to reward him for free. I think you'd better withdraw, self-proclaimed Resolute Demon King. Shut up. The King of Essence doesn't care about the bet anymore. The King of Essence is going to take over your body right now. Wrath was so irritated that the bet he started wasn't bearing the result he wanted. It was to the point that he was intensely grinding his teeth while exuding coldness and anger. Whir! Raon used Glacier to create a wall of frost inside his mana circuit so that Wrath's coldness and anger wouldn't be able to penetrate. Do you believe the King of Essence is simply repeating the same thing? Wrath's coldness, which was seeping inside his mana circuit, distorted. It turned into the thin shape of a sharp blade and started piercing against Glacier's wall. Creak! The spear of coldness that contained a thin, yet powerful energy started splitting the wall of Glacier apart. Witness my power. The King of Essence has recovered enough strength to perfectly change the shape of his coldness. Now, you will also. Ah, so that's how you do it. Raon smiled cheerfully and used Glacier to create the exact same spear that Wrath was using. Clang! The two spears of ice collided with each other, and they disappeared at the same time. Raon dragged the ice from it to his energy center and increased his coldness of the frost. Why, you bastard! Thank you, I learned something new once again. Cool. It's not over yet. The King of Essence hasn't given up yet. Wrath created a thinner and sharper spear to attack his mana circuit once again, but it just disappeared each time, blocked by Raon's spear. This is pretty good practice. It was necessary to create the spear faster and more precisely in order to defend against Wrath's spear. As he kept focusing on defense, messages appeared in front of his eyes. You've endured Wrath's interruption. Energy has increased by 1. Perception has increased by 1. Probably thanks to the practice of stopping the spear with a spear, his stats increased faster than usual. God damn it! Wrath started shouting towards the sky. Raon was glad that Wrath returned to being the giving Wrath. That was the best Wrath there was. Sir Raon. When the thin crescent moon rose to the sky, Dorian opened the door to the training ground and entered. I've finished my mission. Let's go eat. Already? What do you mean already? I've been on duty the whole day. Dorian frowned and started waving his hand around. It looked like he was going to throw the chair he took out of his belly pocket. I'm sorry. I didn't notice so much time had passed. Raon licked his lips, looking up into the sky. He was so focused on training that he didn't even notice that night had already come. Let's eat at the Branch of Frost today. I heard they have excellent apple meat pies, since they got some good apples after such a long time. Apple meat pie? Before Raon could answer, Wrath popped up like a worm protruding from the ground. Raon Zighart, let's go. This is the opportunity to eat some apple meat pies. Since Wrath could only dream about the apple meat pie for the past 4 months, drool was flowing from his mouth. Shouldn't they be already closed at this hour? Today is a weekday. I've already made an appointment with Yua. You are quick to take action with something like this. I made an appointment as soon as I heard they got new apples. Dorian returned the chair to his belly pocket and smiled cheerfully. Wrath was trying to read his mind with his mouth wide open. Since Raon had gotten some stats and would get the rewards for their bet soon enough, it seemed reasonable to do him a favor by eating it. Let's go. Yes. Ooh. An excellent choice. Raon headed towards the Branch of Frost, walking with a cheerful man and Demon King. Welcome. Yua was cleaning the tables, smiling when they entered. There were no clients inside the pub, probably because it was already closed. Are you sure it's still open? It's okay since you've made an appointment, I've already made the preparations. Please wait for a moment. Yua nodded and went to the kitchen. It seemed like the manager wasn't there that day, since no other presence than Yua's could be felt from the kitchen. Wow! I've been looking forward to this fragrance. The coldness flowing from Rath's mouth covered the entire floor of the pub. Whoa! Today is pretty cold. Yua, give me some chicken stew with apples. Dorian made an additional order while his shoulders and arms trembled. It looked like he managed to sense something strange. A apple chicken stew. An apple meat pie and an apple chicken stew. Something that looked like an ice breath was coming from his mouth. I'm sorry. It's because of this demon king, who went crazy for food. Raon forced Rath to close his mouth and sighed. If he knew that would happen, he would have fed him beforehand. Ugh. The food is ready. As Rath's coldness was about to emerge once again, Yua brought the pie and stew on a large tray. It felt like the sweet fragrance of apples was relieving his exhaustion. Is the manager not around today? He went to talk with the merchant that brought the apples today, but he hasn't come back yet. He's always like this. Yua placed her hands on her waist and mumbled that she was always the only one working. Anyway, please eat before it gets cold. I'm actually better at cooking than my grandfather. Yua whispered while swaying her twin tails, as if she was telling him a secret. Sniff. An apple meat pie and apple stew. Is this Devildom? Did the King of Essence finally return to Devildom? Rath was jumping around in the air, like a kid that got the toy he wanted as a present. Eat it already. My mouth is watering. Okay. Raon served some pie and stew on a dish and ate a spoonful of the stew. Oh! He automatically exclaimed from the taste. The mixture of the apple's sweetness and the chicken's salty taste was roughly stimulating his tongue. The savory and rich soup spread satisfaction throughout his mouth. It's delicious. The harmony between the sweet and salty taste is engulfing the King of Essence's tongue like the harmony between wind and fire. This is the taste of Devildom. Wow! It's delicious. It's really delicious. Even though Rath was supposed to be a gourmet, that was a relatively simple description of the taste. It was at the same level as Dorian, who was just repeating that it was delicious. Then, Raon took a bite on the apple meat pie. Despite its hard appearance, the pie unfolded softly upon entering his mouth. The juices of the small pieces of apple and the minced meat mixed with each other in harmony to surround his tongue. The taste reminded him of the warm and refreshing spring. And the difference in texture between the crunchy apple and the squishy meat was fun to chew on. This is amazing. Raon nodded his head. He'd eaten many times in the pub before, but that pie was definitely the best. He felt like he would pay any amount of money for it. He could understand why it was sold out so quickly. This is incredible. The apples today are truly outrageous. Dorian was also praising the apple meat pie and gave a thumbs up as he said that it was way more delicious than the ones before. Ah, this is it. The reason the King of Essence has been staying next to you was for this very moment. This is the true taste of hell. Rath was continuously emanating coldness from his body, deeply moved by the apple meat pie. It looked like he would ascend soon enough. Is it that good? Yes, it's really delicious. Hee, thank you. Yua smiled happily and returned to the kitchen. She brought out some other dishes, telling him to eat more, and all of them were delicious. Cool. The King of Essence can now die without regrets. That was the taste of the world. Rath looked truly satisfied as he nodded in approval. Apparently, her talent wasn't only singing, but also cooking. The speed was a bit lacking, but it was more delicious than the manager's food. Thank you for the meal. After eating about 10 servings, Raon placed the money on the table. The amount was about 4 times higher than the cost indicated on the menu. This is more than the price of the food. That's just how much I was satisfied. And we were late today, so I'm giving you a tip. Raon waved his hand, dismissing her words with a smile. You are right. A satisfying meal deserves payment. It was the most delicious meal I've ever had here. Wrath and Dorian nodded at the same time. Thank you. I'll return next time. Raon waved his hand at Yua as she bowed, leaving the branch of frost. The pineapple girl has a talented hand on top of her voice. She deserves to be the King of Essence's third mate indeed. Third? The first is the ice cream girl, the second is the beef girl, and the pineapple girl is the third. Ice cream was Renan, beef was Martha, and pineapple was Yua. The Demon King really did whatever he wanted. How pathetic. As Raon was about to return to the scout's quarters while clicking his tongue, a robust old man walked up to him. It was the manager of the branch of Frost, the grandfather of Yua. Why are you so late? Yua was extremely angry. Dorian made a fuss, telling him that he was in big trouble. Ha, that's a big problem. I had a lengthy conversation with my friend, since I hadn't seen him in a long time. Despite the fierce look in his eyes, the manager smiled softly as he nodded. Thank you for visiting. I'll go ahead and get scolded by my granddaughter. He bowed lightly and entered the branch of frost. They could hear Yua inside, shouting at him about him coming back so late. I knew he would get yelled at. Dorian giggled, rubbing his belly pocket. Isn't he really different from his impression? I thought he was a scary person at first, but he is actually a really kind and gentle person. Didn't you feel anything strange just now? Strange? He titled his head, expressing his confusion. Raon narrowed his eyes, looking at the branch of frost, where the manager just entered. It's strange. Yua was humming while cleaning the table that Raon and Dorian had used. Creak, creak. The sound of the door opening felt unusually frightening. When she looked back in surprise, it was her grandfather. Grandfather! Why did you return so late? Yua snorted, grabbing the dishcloth tightly. The time flew by while I was talking with him. The grandfather locked the door and closed the curtains with a gentle smile on his face. You are always like this. It must have been a busy day. That's because the rumor spread about the excellent apples. I wished I had more than 2 bodies. Ah, I'm sorry. You should go out and play tomorrow. Grandpa will work on his own. The manager awkwardly scratched his cheek and walked up to Yua to pat her head. Heh, it's okay. Moreover, I earned a lot today. Yua proudly started talking about the gold and silver, then stopped midway. She raised her head to check her grandfather. The big and warm hand, countless wrinkles around his eyes, and his slightly bent back were exactly like her kind grandfather, yet she somehow felt that he was different. Gasp! She realized it upon meeting his eyes. An ominous darkness was residing inside his gentle eyes. Who are you? Yua was trembling intensely as she stepped back. Since she'd been living with him for her entire life, her intuition could tell that the man in front of her wasn't her grandfather. It was something else pretending to be him. Yua, what's the matter? I asked who you are. That's so mean. All I did was return late. It looked like he thought she was joking as he shrugged his shoulders and walked towards her. Where is my grandfather? Yua, what are you talking about? Her grandfather's face was speaking with her grandfather's voice. He was acting and talking the exact same as her grandfather, but she could tell that it was a different existence from him. You aren't my grandfather. I asked you where my grandfather was. Yua wiped the tears flowing down her cheek and stepped back. Feeling her back touch the cold wall, goosebumps appeared on her skin. She couldn't withdraw any further, yet the monster wearing the grandfather's skin was right in front of her. Yua, what's wrong with you? Your jokes are going too far. What did you do to my grandfather? Please. She screamed, and he was petrified like a stone statue. His dry gaze as he looked down at her was visibly different from before. How did you find out? The gentle voice of the old grandfather turned into a shrill voice, scratching his lungs. Ah! Yua collapsed on her knees and her entire body trembled. His evil eyes, lacking even a single speck of emotion, made her hair stand on end. Grandfather! Return my grandfather to me. Even though she was filled with fear, she was still looking for her grandfather instead of caring for her own safety. However, the monster didn't have any intention of replying to her. How did you find out? 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 His neck turned in a direction that was impossible for a normal human being. Yua started to hyperventilate from the fear caused by the repetition of his dry voice. Ah! The monster's head, which used to look like her grandfather, expanded before shrinking back. She felt like she was going crazy from witnessing the grotesque shape, similar to a mixture of clays of different colors. How did you find out? The monster opened its hand. The large hand grasped at her, and a black hole similar to a beast's mouth appeared. Some kind of gray clay was dripping from the hole. Yua! She could see her grandfather's appearance inside the black hole. He was waving at her with a gentle smile. Grandfather! As her grandfather approached her, the black hole was also getting closer to her. Yua closed her eyes tightly. How did you find out? The moment the grinning monster was about to swallow her up into the hole of its hand, the wall she was leaning against exploded. Bomb! Bomb! The hot blast bursting through the wall melted the monster's hand. Feeling the gentle hand pulling her shoulder, she raised her head. Inside the ash and dust flying around, a blonde swordsman stood there, surrounded by a deadly aura. Cling! Crimson lightning sparkled in his eyes as he drew his sword. Who the hell are you? Chapter 140. Raon completely turned around. He tapped his scabbard while looking at the branch of frost, which had just been locked up. What was that just now? He got an ominous feeling from the manager he'd encountered just then. It wasn't from his normal sense, but his sixth sense was telling him about it. There was nothing strange about him, though. The manager's face, eyes, steps, and accent. There was nothing unusual about his behavior or speech. It was exactly the same manager he saw each time he visited the branch of frost. However, the insides were different. It felt like some unknown lump was wearing human skin. Was that my mistake? Maybe I've been too sensitive recently. Raon frowned, pressing on his temple. It could have been his mistake since he was too focused on reproducing the blonde swordsman's technique recently. No, there's no way that was a mistake. There was no way his sixth sense was wrong, since he had the ring of fire. There was no way he would make a mistake at such a close distance. Wrath was glaring at the branch of frost, which confirmed his doubts. I see. Raon used glacier, and a small wave surged from the ocean of perception, spreading concentrically. It was the manager's presence that entered the branch of frost just now. It wasn't the kind splash he usually made, but a mechanical wave without any emotion. I knew it. Raon clenched his fist. His intuition wasn't wrong, since it was an unknown existence wearing the manager's skin. Sir Raon, why aren't you moving? Dorian, who was walking towards the scout's quarters, returned to him and tilted his head. Dorian, follow the violent noise in a moment. What? Leaving a confused Dorian behind, Raon ran to the back of the branch of frost. Why aren't you headed there directly? It might hold you a hostage if I enter through the door. Since he didn't know its identity, he couldn't move recklessly. He silently moved to the wall, which Yua was leaning her back against. One became the most careless at the moment of their attack. That was the timing Raon was aiming for. Creak! Something with the manager's appearance was extending its hand towards Yua. The moment the ominous presence spread out like a wrap, Raon used the 10,000 flames cultivation to destroy the wall. Bomb! While it was confused by the sudden explosion, Raon pulled Yua towards him and drew his sword. Who the hell are you? It showed itself behind the gray dust descending on the ground. Its face was that of the manager, with his eyes wide. Why? Why are you doing this? His lips were trembling as he stepped back, pretending he couldn't understand his actions. Say that again after hiding that hand. Raon pointed at the manager's hand with a cold smile. A pitch-black mouth was opening and closing in its huge hand. How did you find out again? How? 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 The manager's mouth split open like a crescent moon, and its head puffed up, then shrank back repeatedly. It didn't even look like a monster, let alone a human being. Ah! Yua's tears dropped onto Raon's hand, which was covering her shoulder, and his hand stiffened automatically. Qua! What is that? Dorian's jaw dropped upon witnessing the monster that looked similar to a mass of clay or mud. What is that monster? Take care of Yua. Raon passed Yua to the startled Dorian and stood in front of the monster. What is this thing? It's a doppelganger. Doppelganger? But a doppelganger's transformation isn't so perfect. A doppelganger was a monster that ate humans to transform into them, but the appearance was all they could copy. Their behavior and speech was completely different. Raon couldn't believe that it was a doppelganger, since he didn't only copy the appearance, but also perfectly simulated the manager's speech and action. It is modified through black magic. They've shredded the sanctity of life to pieces to create a new race. Its base is a doppelganger, but it's pretty much a chimera at this point. Wrath glared at the doppelganger, murmuring that it was something even the demons wouldn't do. Siren's vessel. I have to take the Siren's vessel at all costs. The doppelganger was darting its gray tongue in and out in Yua's direction instead of Raon, who was ready to fight it. Siren's vessel. That word was enough for him to understand. Eden was the one that sent the modified doppelganger, and their target wasn't the magic stone but Yua. Siren's vessel. With a grotesque smile, the doppelganger extended its hand. The arm stretched like rubber towards Yua. You are looking down on me too much. Raon was already expecting that to happen the moment he saw its wiggling arm. Slash. Raon swung his sword to block the arm's trajectory. The slash hit the doppelganger's arm like lightning to sever it from the middle. The Siren's vessel has to be. Even though its arm was cut off, the doppelganger kept glaring at Yua without even groaning. It looked like its sense of pain was erased when it was modified. Whir! The doppelganger's arm grew back in an instant. Its regeneration was surpassing the Ice Troll Lord. Don't get in my way. The doppelganger's left hand puffed up like a boulder, and a thorn whip was flapping from its right hand. Key! It kicked the ground to run towards him, slamming down with its huge fist. A tremendous amount of pressure was weighing down on him, but Raon simply pulled his sword back instead of withdrawing. Bomb! Along with a tremendous wave of power, the doppelganger's left shoulder was blasted off entirely. Siren's vessel. As expected of a monster that couldn't feel the pain, the doppelganger immediately swung its whip from its right hand. The thorn whip was coiling around Raon's body like a snake. Raon used the 10,000 flames cultivation on the whip that was curling in his direction. The flower petals dancing on the blade fluttered around. Whir! The flower blossoms of flame followed the whip and burned up the doppelganger's upper body. Raon thought he could subjugate it just like that, but that was his mistake. Key. The doppelganger cut off its burning body on its own, and regenerated itself as if it were turning back time. The regeneration was so fast that an average person wouldn't even be able to tell anything had ever happened. Siren, I have to take the Siren's vessel. The doppelganger kept repeating the same thing, as if that was the only goal of its life. Key. The doppelganger roared. Turning its hands into greatswords, it flailed them around while walking towards him. Even though there was no technique in its movements, the sheer strength and speed couldn't be ignored. Slash. Analyzing all of the doppelganger's movements, Raon stepped forward. He ripped apart its arms and sliced its chest. Spurt. Gray blood gushed from the doppelganger's chest, which was cut by the 10,000 flames cultivation, but it only lasted for a moment. The injury in its chest was closed in an instant. Key. Despite burning with fire and cutting with his sword, the doppelganger's body kept growing back like a lizard's tail. Raon felt like there was no end to it since it couldn't even feel pain. I haven't used my fist in a long time. Raon sheathed his sword and clenched his fist. The 10,000 flames cultivation's aura surrounded his fist like thick armor. Key. The doppelganger's hand transformed into an iron mace and sharp spikes appeared throughout his body. It looked like it was trying to hurt him in return if he tried to attack it. Do you think that's enough? Raon kicked the ground and pierced into the doppelganger's face. The iron mace, which was the size of an adult's body, swung towards his head and heart. It was an attack with the intention of quickly eliminating a hindrance. That was why it was easy to read. Raon deflected the first iron mace with the back of his hand and thrust his left fist. The strike contained the 10,000 Flames cultivation's energy and the Void Tiger Fist's rotation as it shattered the iron mace completely. Bomb! His right fist followed, to punch the right side of the doppelganger's upper body. It sharpened the spike even further, but it was overwhelmed by the tremendous energy imbued in Raon's fist, and its upper body got blasted apart. I'm only getting started. The 10,000 Flames cultivation's energy fully bloomed around his fist. The raging flame around his fist became a storm to assault the doppelganger's body. Facing the attack affecting a plane instead of a line, the doppelganger's regeneration couldn't catch up to the damage. Its clay-like body started to disappear, as if it were erased by an eraser. Sirens, gah! Raon destroyed its mouth as it tried to blabber again and struck its chest. It seemed the fear still remained in it despite the sense of pain being gone, as its eyes started to tremble. Stop doing that! Yua's scream could be heard right before the doppelganger's upper body was completely destroyed. My grandfather? My grandfather is still alive inside. Please save him. Yua started crying on her knees. Mr. Swordsman. Key. The moment Raon's gaze was distracted at Yua, the doppelganger's body, which was covering the ground, transformed into a long shape like a snake and leaped outside. Raon didn't say anything. He simply met Yua's eyes to confirm her desperate wishes before running in the direction the doppelganger had left. You let it escape on purpose. I can't kill it in front of her. Even though it was a monster, it was taking her grandfather's shape. He didn't use any brutal moves because he couldn't kill it in front of Yua, and even released it at the end. And there's no way it can escape. Raon had already finished analyzing its patterns. He was confident that he could find it no matter what. Is it leaving the castle? The doppelganger was running outside the castle towards the north, where Stalin Mountain was located. Raon climbed the castle wall. He could see the doppelganger running through the snowfield like a wolf. You won't go anywhere. Raon stomped heavily on the ground, creating a crack. His body leaped like a rock from a catapult to strike the doppelganger's back. Slam! Along with the sound of bursting flesh, the doppelganger was shoved into the snow. Key! It stood back up immediately and started to regenerate its destroyed flesh, but its gray eyes were clearly telling him that it was in a panic. This is as far as you go. Raon drew his sword once again. He lowered his posture while using the 10,000 Flames cultivation to the extreme. He wanted to kill it right away, but he couldn't move his blade because he remembered Yua's eyes right before. Is it really impossible to save him? A doppelganger was an extremely rare monster. Since there weren't many people that encountered one, he'd never heard of anything about the precautions against it or how to save a person that was swallowed by one. How pathetic. Wrath sneered and popped out from the bracelet. The pineapple girl told you that the old man is inside. She is right about that. What? Use Glacier to look into it in detail. Focus on the inside rather than the outside. Raon took a glance at Wrath before starting to use Glacier. He focused the entire ocean of perception, concentrating on the doppelganger lying in front of him. Key. The doppelganger tried to punch him with a huge fist, one the size of a boulder. Raon simply dodged it with river footwork and focused on the ocean of perception. He could feel its energy, nature, and liquid-like body in his grasp. What am I supposed to feel? Ha! He could feel a weak energy inside the doppelganger's body, splashing like water inside a bottle. It didn't belong to the doppelganger. Even though it was as faint as a snuffed-out candle, it was certainly the vitality of a human being. Did you finally realize it? The pub's old man is still alive. It was pulling out his memory inside its body just like a child sucking on a candy. How can I save him? Raon adjusted his grip on the sword. Since he received a lot from Yua, he wanted to save him if it was possible. It's impossible for you right now. Raph decisively shook his head. Your current level isn't good enough to only kill the doppelganger while leaving the old man alive. What level do I need? In humans' terms, your mind has to become one with the weapon. Unification with the blade? Yes. You need to become one with the sword to cut nothing but the doppelganger, which is impossible for you right now. If you make the slightest mistake, the old man is going to die. That's fine then. What? Even though that's impossible for me alone, I can do it with some help. Raon sheathed his sword and drew the blade of Requiem from his waist. Lifting the crimson blade, which was emanating ghastly energy, he asked. I want to help the man in there. Can you help me? Whir. The blade of Requiem resonated clearly, telling him that he didn't need to ask the obvious. The ghastly energy was burning on the crimson blade like a haze. Kring! The flame of 10,000 flames cultivation mixed with the ghastly energy, creating a bloody crimson energy that surrounded Raon and the blade of Requiem. Just like the river merging into the ocean, the blade of Requiem's ghastly energy mixed into the 10,000 flames cultivation's aura. Huh? Are you trying to achieve unity through the will of the blade instead of your level? Wrath exclaimed, witnessing the natural harmony between the aura and ghastly energy. I don't really like it, but it seems possible. Raon nodded upon hearing Wrath's answer. Then all that's left is to decide what he needed to cut. Since he needed to slice nothing but the doppelganger's soul, the most important part was to decide where to cut. You only have a single chance. The old man's state isn't good enough to survive more hits. You'd better pick carefully which part to sever. I know. Raon nodded. He could feel through Glacier that it wasn't impossible for the manager to die at any time. He needed to cut it in a single strike, without any impact. Key. As Raon was focused on checking the doppelganger's body, it started screaming and extended its arm. Slam! The doppelganger curled its splashing body, then started expanding like an unfolding rubber. It reached 6 meters in height in no time, punching him with a fist the size of a house. Ignoring the huge fist slamming down on him while covering the moonlight, Raon resonated the rings of fires. The world became slower. Inside his apparently paused sight, his red eyes examined the doppelganger's insides. There! At the left side of the doppelganger's waist, there was a region smaller than a bean, no. A region smaller than a grain of rice was spurting the void energy like a fountain. That grain was the origin of the doppelganger's power. Creak! Raon grasped the blade of Requiem in a reverse grip. The 10,000 flames cultivation's aura and the ghastly energy merged with each other in harmony, like paints of different colors poured into water, and the bloody crimson energy surged onto the blade. Unification with the blade was normally achieved by the swordsman's own power. However, Raon had become one with the blade of Requiem in the true sense of the word by having the same will. Raon stomped the ground and extended his hand. The blade of Requiem's natural movement felt like it was part of his hand. The doppelganger sensed the danger to its life and moved the core of its body, but Raon's extreme perception didn't miss that slight movement. The crimson light born from the end of his blade pierced through the doppelganger's soul.